the value of time. Every single one of us has had a taste of time. Every single one of us has had a portion of time. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah likes to say, and every single one of us is a piece of time. We've had a portion of time, a taste of time, and we are time. And that's why Al-Hasan al-Basri said that you are no more than a collection of time. And when one of those days of yours goes, O child of Adam, a portion of you has left. And that's why some of the ulama, they said that there is nothing in the world that can be replaced, and one that can't is time. When it goes, it's gone, and it never comes back. You can never search for it. You can never pay for it. Time, when it goes, it doesn't turn back. And Allah Azza wa Jal in the Quran, He shows great value to the concept of time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْعَصْرِ, by time. Then He says, verily, mankind is in a loss. They are in a loss when it comes to the time and how they use it. Allah's Prophet ﷺ said, there are two blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal most of mankind are found at loss in: good health and also free time. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He's saying the same thing as the Prophet ﷺ, that a person is at loss when it comes to the concept of time. And why is that? That is because we do not realize the importance of this time. But though it is of great importance at times, we sit together between each one another and we discuss how we can waste this time. Do you believe that we've not created you except in vain, without a reason, without a purpose? And our dear ulama in the past, they realized that. Ibn al-Jawzi rahmatullah alayhi says that it's very seldom that people realized the meaning and the reason and the true purpose behind existence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created indeed all of us for a purpose. And Allah talks about this purpose in the Quran. And we all hear it all the time. But do we apply it? The purpose of this life. We don't realize it, though we've heard of it, but those in the past, they realized it. Take for example, as I said, the life of Ibn Aqil al-Hanbali, who used to be a sign from amongst the signs of Allah Azza wa Jal when it came to the value of time. Abul Wafa, he used to say that even in terms of my eating, I try my best to eat something that doesn't take my time. So what he used to do was, he would take a glass of water and he would take some cake and dip it in this water, and then have this cake that's so easy to swallow, so he doesn't spend his time chewing. And we can't have a dinner, a meal, except without the appetizers, the main course, the side course, and the left course, and the right course, and all sorts of courses. Imam al-Dhahabi rahmatullah alayhi mentions, Ibn Aqil particularly, he wrote the largest book that history has ever seen. The book was 800 volumes long. And at that time, paper was so expensive. Pens were very expensive. You wonder how much it cost for him to write that book. A student of his, Ibn Aqil, had to sell his entire house to buy this book and make it a trust for the people to come. Ibn al-Jawzi rahmatullah alayhi, talking about this, and also talking about the value of time, he says, at times a person is tested by those that waste his time. We all have friends, we all have people that we don't want to meet because of the fact that they waste our time. So for that reason, Ibn al-Jawzi had a very unique methodology in dealing with this type of people. Either I will refuse them from coming over to my house. And if I do such, it would cause social problems. People want to meet each other. It's amongst the, the characteristics of man in general, to socialize. Or I would let them in and they'll waste my time. So what he used to do was, he would take paper and prepare the paper, cut the paper up in the right size, prepare the paper as the people would come visit him. He would take the pens and the pencils that he had, and he would sharpen them as the people would come and visit him. He would take the books that he'd already written. Imagine, every time someone comes to you to visit, Ibn al-Jawzi's already done writing a book. So he'd use that time to start binding the book that he's written. How much do you think this average person in the world spends sleeping? 1/3 of his life, because most people, as there was a survey done, they sleep 7.5 hours a day. How many hours do you think the Prophet ﷺ used to sleep? 3 hours is if we only keep into consideration the tahajjud that he used to do and the sleep that he used to sleep. But there's other things that a person has to do as well. So the time goes really fast. But even so, the Prophet ﷺ in a short life was able to accomplish so much that and nations for generations are not able to accomplish. Because he wouldn't let his time be wasted. Even at the time when people would be sleeping, the Prophet ﷺ would be doing things for the ummah. At the time where everybody else is busy with his affairs, the Prophet ﷺ would go and give the rights of his family. The Prophet ﷺ, he would go sometimes around Dhuhr time, a little bit before, a little bit after. Though at that point it's known that everybody's sleeping in town. Medina was a hot place. The Prophet ﷺ uses this time, gets up and walks to the house of Fatima with another Sahabi, and he says, bring out Al-Hasan for me. I would like to see Al-Hasan. Everybody's sleeping, he's busy with what? With the affair of the ummah. Discharging an army, dedicating people to duties, praying salah at night time, waking up in the morning, answering the people's questions, being the jurist from amongst them. All of these things, and then he has to go and give the rights of his family, his daughters, his children, and then he grabs Al-Hasan. And he wasn't a rigid man, alayhi salatu wasalam. He was the best amongst us in khuluq. To his family, to his daughters, to his children, and grabs them, puts them close to him, smells him and kisses him, and he says, "Oh Allah, I love this child of mine. So love him as well. And love anyone that loves him as well." Alayhi salatu wasalam. That's how the Prophet ﷺ would spend his time. Amir ibn Abd Qais, he was amongst the Salaf. One day Amir ibn Abd Qais was walking down the street as a man came to him. He said, "I would like to speak to you for a moment." You know what Amir said to him? "Hold the sun in its place, as in the clock is ticking. If you have something to say, make sure it's valuable." One of the things that I've noticed people really waste their time, and I don't know about you guys here in Abu Dhabi. I was on the plane. I saw a grown man. He had an iPad with him. And on the iPad he was playing a game that I am dazzled at how people waste their time with this game. Angry Birds, everybody knows. So it's over here as well. It's not even about the value of your time. It's about the value of you as an individual. A waste of life, a waste of time. And the older you get, the more you should recognize that your time is coming. And that every single day that passes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving Himself an excuse and excusing you from making excuses. As Allah's Prophet ﷺ said, whoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him an age of 60 years then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken away all of the excuses of this individual in terms of age. So if you go on that day and say, I didn't have time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wouldn't accept that as an excuse. A man 60 years old, fully grown, at that point a person should be ready for death at any moment. People in the past weren't like us. They didn't have iPads. Realize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, He will ask you about your time. As Allah's Prophet ﷺ, he says in the Hadith of Abi Barza al-Aslami, the feet of the slave of Allah Azza wa Jal will not move on the day of judgment until you're asked about 4 things. Your life, all of your life. Whether you be old, you be young. Every single person will be asked about their time and how they spent it. And you'll be asked about your knowledge. At that moment you'll be asked about even why you didn't learn your deen, if you start giving your excuses. And also from his wealth. From where did he gain this wealth? Where did you get that house? Did you get it through riba, usury, interest, calling and waging war against Allah Azza wa Jal? Did you do that? Where did you get that car? A loan that entails interest, displeasing Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger? Was it through that? What kind of work did you work in? Did you have to lie, cheat? All of these things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be asking about. Make tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal if such is your case. Alongside with yourself, you'll be asked also about the children and the wives that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you responsibility for. And Imam al-Ghazali rahmatullah alayh, he used to say, and it's a very beautiful saying of his, some of you might be businessmen. He used to say, your time is like your capital. And through that time of yours, do you make business with Allah Azza wa Jal when it comes to your deeds? Because if you don't have time, then you can't have actions. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he used to be very careful when it used to come to his time. And he would say that I have never been more remorseful of anything for one day that goes by and the sun of that day sets and that day wasn't better than the day before. And then Imam al-Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, he continues and he says, what's the benefit of wealth that's increasing while the time is decreasing? If you're spending your whole life and everything you do working 4 jobs, trying to, not trying to make ends meet, but working 4 jobs so you can have the best of cars, the best of lives, make yourself a house that you're never going to use yourself anyways. If you're doing all of that, then what's the benefit of that? Imam al-Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi says, when what? When your time is slowly decreasing, because the real capital through which you make business with Allah Azza wa Jal. And then you say to yourself that, oh, just wait until the day I build my house. Wait until my children grow a little bit older. Wait until I'm done buying this car. Wait and wait and wait. Procrastinating is one of the biggest problems that has occurred in the ummah. Because shaitan doesn't want you to do good. Shaitan is your enemy. Imam al-Ghazali, also speaking about this subject, the example of the individual who procrastinates. It's like while he's young, strong, he can do the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. He can wake up at night, pray, and still go for work. And it won't be difficult for him. His body can take it. The example of the individual who procrastinates is like the example of a very large tree, which we have been obliged and created to uproot. But we delay further and further and further as we grow older, knowing the fact that the older we grow, the more and more difficult it will become for us to uproot this tree. As we grow older, 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 and weaker, weaker and weaker. You've grown old, you've lost all that time. You've grown weaker, it's become more and more difficult for you to uproot that tree of ma'asiyah. And with this I'll leave you off, that life is extremely short. And you should be fearful of Allah Azza wa Jal, that you live an entire life of 60 years and you've left behind wealth for yourself, for your children, and you haven't left behind anything for your akhirah, the real abode. The Prophet ﷺ, he walked into Aisha's house one day and he said, what happened to that sheep that we slaughtered? Aisha said, nothing is left of it except the shoulder, O Prophet of Allah ﷺ. He said, every single thing is left of it except that shoulder, because everything was spent in the way of Allah except that shoulder. The adhan that every single one of us had done in our ears when we were children, and the fact that the day he dies is when they pray upon him, is an evidence showing you that the entire life goes by in a flash, just as the time between adhan and salah every single day goes by.